What if I told you that a sexually transmitted infection you probably thought was old news could soon become untreatable? Yes, untreatable. Imagine living in a world where one of the most common STIs, gonorrhea, spreads silently through millions of people and the very antibiotics we once relied on no longer work. This isn't science fiction, it's happening right now. Here's the terrifying truth. In 2023, over 600,000 people in the US were infected with gonorrhea. Many of them had no symptoms at all. They didn't know they were sick, but they were still spreading it. Now combine that with the fact that gonorrhea is quickly learning how to outsmart our strongest antibiotics. The nightmare scenario. A future where gonorrhea becomes a permanent, incurable infection. Something doctors can't stop. Welcome to the Wellness Way, where we dive deep into the health issues that truly matter. Today I'm going to show you why gonorrhea could soon be untreatable, how it's already changing public health, and, most importantly, what it means for you. Before we begin, make sure you hit subscribe and support the channel. That way you won't miss the powerful health stories we're bringing to light. Stories that could change the way you see your own body and your future. When I first learned about gonorrhea in school, it was described as one of those infections that medicine had already conquered. You get tested, you take antibiotics, and you move on with your life. Simple, right? But the more I dug into it, the more I realized that this assumption was dangerously wrong. What used to be considered a straightforward, even old-fashioned sexually transmitted infection is now becoming one of the biggest threats to modern medicine. And it's not just a problem for people who are sexually active. It's a problem for all of us. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine bacteria so small you can't see them with the naked eye. They move with tiny, hair-like structures called pili, reaching out like little arms, attaching themselves to the cells of your body. Once they grab hold, they burrow in and start multiplying. That's how Neisseria gonorrhoeae, the bacteria behind gonorrhea, spreads. It's invasive, persistent, and disturbingly clever. For decades, antibiotics kept it under control. But like an enemy that refuses to be defeated, gonorrhea is adapting. Slowly, quietly, it's learning how to resist the very drugs designed to kill it. Now here's where the story gets unsettling. In 2023, more than 600,000 people in the United States were diagnosed with gonorrhea. That's a huge number, but what makes it worse is that it's almost certainly an undercount. Why? Because gonorrhea can be completely silent. Up to 70% of infected women show no symptoms at all. They may go weeks, months, or even years without knowing they have it. And in that time, they can unknowingly pass it on to their partners. Men are a little more likely to notice symptoms, burning when urinating, unusual discharge, but even then, not everyone does. So while you're living your life, going to work, dating, raising kids, someone could be carrying gonorrhea without a clue. That's the hidden danger, the quiet spread. It's easy to assume that if you had an infection like this, you'd know. You'd feel sick, you'd see something was wrong, and you'd go to the doctor. But gonorrhea doesn't play by those rules. Sometimes it sits there silently, causing long-term damage without raising alarms. In women, it can move beyond the cervix and into the uterus, fallopian tubes and ovaries, leading to pelvic inflammatory disease. That's not just uncomfortable, it can scar reproductive organs, cause infertility, or set up a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy. In men, the infection can climb into the epididymis, causing severe testicular pain and swelling. And it doesn't stop at the reproductive system. Gonorrhea can infect the throat, the rectum, even the eyes. Newborn babies have gone blind after passing through the birth canal of an infected mother. Think about that for a second. An infection that often doesn't show symptoms can still cause lifelong consequences. That's terrifying enough. But now add another layer. Antibiotics, our best defense, are losing their power. When ceftriaxone, the current drug of choice, was first used, doctors could treat gonorrhea with just 250 milligrams. Today, the recommended dose has doubled to 500 milligrams. And even then, researchers are already isolating strains of the bacteria that don't respond the way they should. If that doesn't scare you, it should. Because we're not just talking about inconvenience. We're talking about the very real possibility of gonorrhea becoming untreatable. I know some people shrug at this idea. They say, well, it's just gonorrhea. Isn't it like a bad infection that you clear up with antibiotics? That's the common assumption, and that's exactly why this story needs to be told. Because the reality is the opposite. Gonorrhea could become the first major sexually transmitted infection in modern times that no drug can cure. And if that happens, the consequences won't stop at the doctor's office. Untreated gonorrhea could mean rising rates of infertility, more complicated pregnancies, and a cascade of new health crises that ripple across communities. So what does this mean for everyday life? For one, it means that testing becomes more important than ever. If so many people can carry the infection without symptoms, waiting until you feel sick isn't enough. Testing is the only way to know for sure. It also means that prevention matters in a way we may not fully appreciate. Condoms, conversations with partners, regular checkups. These aren't just personal choices anymore. They're part of a larger fight to slow the spread of the infection and, just as importantly, slow the march of antibiotic resistance. There's also a moral dimension to this issue that I can't ignore. When someone gets infected multiple times and doesn't take it seriously, they're not just risking their own health. They're contributing to the spread of resistant strains. Every reinfection is another opportunity for the bacteria to learn, adapt, and evolve. And while no one chooses to get sick, our choices after infection matter. Do we complete the treatment properly? Do we talk to partners? Do we take steps to prevent future spread? These aren't just personal decisions, they affect everyone. When I think about gonorrhea today, I don't just think about a medical diagnosis. I think about a mirror. It reflects the way we use medicine, the way we value prevention, and the way we treat public health as a shared responsibility. The bacteria are clever, yes, but the real test isn't whether they can outsmart antibiotics. It's whether we can outsmart ourselves. Can we stop taking treatment for granted? Can we see beyond our own discomfort to recognize the impact on the community? These are the questions that matter, because the choices we make right now will determine whether gonorrhea becomes just another chapter in the long history of human disease, or the opening act in a dangerous new era of untreatable infections. That's why this issue hits me so hard. It's not just about numbers on a chart or a disease most people don't want to talk about. It's about a silent infection that could change everything we thought we knew about modern medicine. It's about how something as private as sex can have consequences that ripple through society. And it's about whether we're ready to face the uncomfortable truth. Gonorrhea isn't just back. It's fighting to become stronger than ever. When you hear the word gonorrhea, it probably doesn't sound like the kind of infection that could change your life forever. Maybe it feels like something people just get treated for and then move on. But once you hear the real stories, the human side of this infection, it stops feeling like a medical footnote and starts to feel personal. I remember reading about a young woman in her 20s who went for a routine checkup. She wasn't sick. She had no pain, no unusual discharge, nothing that would make her think something was wrong. But her doctor decided to run a full STI panel. The test came back positive for gonorrhea. At first she was shocked but calm. After all, it's just antibiotics, right? But a few months later, she returned with severe abdominal pain. This time the diagnosis was pelvic inflammatory disease, a complication of untreated or unnoticed gonorrhea. The infection had travelled up into her reproductive system, leaving behind scars that could block her fallopian tubes. The doctor had to tell her that she might never be able to conceive naturally. What started as a silent infection had rewritten her future. Stories like this aren't rare. They happen every day, and they're a reminder that the most dangerous part of gonorrhea isn't the immediate symptoms. It's what happens when it goes unnoticed or untreated. In men, the story looks different but no less troubling. Imagine waking up one morning with sharp testicular pain and swelling, not knowing that gonorrhea had travelled into the epididymis, the delicate structure where sperm mature. That pain is the body's alarm system, but by the time it goes off, damage may already be done. These are not just short-term inconveniences. They can shape fertility, relationships, and the rest of a person's life. But here's where the story gets even more complicated. The problem isn't just the infection. It's the way we treat it and the way the bacteria fight back. For decades, ceftriaxone has been our go-to weapon. One injection and the infection was gone. At least that's how it used to be. Today, the dosage has doubled, and even then, doctors are seeing strains of gonorrhea that don't respond like they should. Scientists call this antibiotic resistance, but what it really means is that the bacteria are learning. They're rewriting their genetic code to block the drug, pump it out of their cells, or destroy it before it can do any damage. Think about how extraordinary that is. A microscopic organism, invisible to the naked eye, is outsmarting modern medicine. And it doesn't stop with one bacterium. Once one strain figures out how to resist, it can share that information with its neighbours, spreading resistance like wildfire. Every reinfection, every incomplete course of treatment, every unnecessary dose of antibiotics is another chance for gonorrhea to grow stronger. This is where human behaviour collides with biology. Many patients I've seen or read about weren't reckless. They were just unaware. Some didn't know they had the infection. Others assumed it was a urinary tract infection or something minor. A few even treated it lightly because they had been through it before and just got the shot. But here's the catch. Every time gonorrhea comes back, it doesn't come back the same. It comes back smarter, tougher, harder to kill. And when that happens, the stakes rise for everyone, not just the individual. That's why healthcare providers face such a difficult dilemma. Should they simply test, diagnose and treat? Or do they have a responsibility to educate patients about the bigger picture? Personally, I believe they do, because when someone is infected multiple times, the problem stops being only about their personal health. It becomes a public health issue. The more gonorrhea circulates, the more chances it has to evolve into something untreatable. And once that door is opened, it won't just affect those who are sexually active today. It will affect future generations who may inherit a world where gonorrhea is a lifelong condition instead of a curable infection. This isn't meant to scare people into panic. It's meant to spark responsibility. Safe sex practices aren't just about avoiding discomfort or embarrassment. They're about protecting the collective health of our communities. Getting tested isn't just about personal peace of mind. It's about cutting off the silent spread. And completing treatment isn't just about making your own symptoms go away. It's about making sure the bacteria don't get another chance to adapt. I can't help but think about the irony here. In the age of advanced medicine, with cutting-edge surgeries and futuristic therapies, we're being challenged by an infection that dates back centuries. We once thought we had it beaten, and now it's threatening to beat us. That contradiction, the old becoming new again, the weak becoming strong, is what makes this story so unsettling. It forces us to confront the limits of modern medicine and the consequences of complacency. And yet, I don't think the story is hopeless. The same way bacteria can adapt, so can we. Public health campaigns, better education, wider access to testing, and responsible use of antibiotics can slow the spread. Individual choices like using protection, being honest with partners, and seeking care early can make a difference. What it comes down to is this: gonorrhea doesn't just challenge our biology. It challenges our willingness to take responsibility for ourselves and each other. So the next time you hear about gonorrhea, don't dismiss it as something that happens to other people. Remember that it could be silent, it could be closer than you think, and it could be a glimpse into the future of what happens when we lose our most powerful tools against disease. The question isn't just whether antibiotics can keep up with gonorrhea, it's whether we can. The more I think about gonorrhea, the more I realize this isn't just about one infection. It's about a warning sign that stretches far beyond a single disease. If gonorrhea can evolve its way past our strongest antibiotics, what does that say about the future of modern medicine? What does that mean for other bacteria lurking in hospitals, schools, and our everyday lives? We live in a time when antibiotics are so common that most of us don't give them a second thought. You get sick, the doctor prescribes something, and within a few days you start to feel better. But what if that safety net wasn't there anymore? What if routine infections, the kind that used to be cleared up in a week, suddenly became life-threatening again? That's the shadow hanging over the story of gonorrhea. It's not just a sexually transmitted infection. It's a messenger pointing to the cracks in our medical defenses. I imagine a world where a simple sore throat caused by bacteria no longer has a cure. Or a child with an ear infection can't get relief because the antibiotics don't work. Or a surgical patient faces enormous risks, not from the operation itself, but from the infections that follow. That's the reality of the post-antibiotic era that scientists have been warning about for years. And gonorrhea may be the first infection to drag us into that world. But here's the thing. The future isn't written yet. We still have a chance to change the story. That means rethinking how we use antibiotics, not just in the doctor's office, but in agriculture, industry, and everyday life. It means respecting the fact that bacteria aren't mindless. They're incredibly resourceful. Every unnecessary prescription, every incomplete treatment, every careless exposure gives them one more chance to adapt. If we don't take that seriously, then yes, gonorrhea could become untreatable, but so could so many other infections. This is where the human element comes in. For me, this story isn't just about biology, it's about responsibility. Every time I hear someone joke about STIs or dismiss them as not a big deal, I think about the patients who have faced infertility, chronic pain, or devastating diagnoses because of an infection they didn't even know they had. I think about the mothers who unknowingly passed gonorrhea to their newborns, leading to eye infections or even blindness. These aren't abstract statistics. They're people, families, futures, all shaped by a microscopic organism that most of us would rather not talk about. And maybe that's part of the problem. We don't like talking about gonorrhea. We don't like talking about STIs in general. There's stigma, shame, and discomfort. But silence is exactly what the bacteria need. The less we test, the less we discuss, the more room they have to spread unnoticed. Breaking that silence is one of the most powerful tools we have. It's not just about awareness, it's about action. So what can we actually do? On an individual level, it starts with prevention. Safe sex practices may sound old-fashioned, but they work. Condoms are not just about avoiding pregnancy, they're about reducing the risk of infections that can change lives forever. Getting tested regularly isn't a sign of recklessness, it's a sign of responsibility, both to yourself and to the people you care about. And if you do test positive, completing treatment exactly as prescribed is crucial. Skipping doses or stopping early isn't just a risk for you, it's a gift to the bacteria, giving them the opportunity to survive and evolve. On a broader level, we need to think about community. Public health isn't an abstract concept. It's the way individual actions add up to collective outcomes. One person ignoring symptoms, one person skipping a test, one person not finishing antibiotics. It all adds up. And just as importantly, one person making good choices can inspire others to do the same. That's why I believe doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers play such an essential role beyond just treatment. They're educators, they're advocates. They're often the only people standing between misinformation and the truth. And while no provider can control what patients choose to do, they can frame the conversation in a way that empowers people to make informed decisions. Because when patients understand that their choices affect not only themselves, but also their entire community, the weight of those choices becomes clear. Looking ahead, I see two possible futures. In one, we ignore the warning signs. We continue to treat gonorrhea and other infections as minor inconveniences, until the day comes when the drugs no longer work. That future is bleak. It's a world where surgery is risky, childbirth is dangerous, and infections we once thought harmless become deadly again. In the other future, we take the warning seriously. We invest in research, in new antibiotics, in vaccines, and in smarter public health strategies. We normalize testing. We remove stigma. We treat prevention not as an afterthought, but as a cornerstone of health. That future is harder to achieve, but it's worth fighting for. And this brings me back to gonorrhea. Right now, it's still treatable for most people. But the window is closing. Every reinfection, every resistant strain, every delay in action pushes us closer to the edge. The question is, will we listen to the alarm, or will we hit snooze until it's too late? I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do know this. Change starts with conversations like this one. Talking openly about gonorrhea, about STIs, about antibiotic resistance. It matters. It strips away the stigma. It replaces silence with knowledge. And maybe, just maybe, it inspires someone to make a choice that protects not only themselves, but everyone around them. So here's my challenge to you. Think about the role you play in this story. Are you the person who ignores the risk, or the person who helps stop the spread? Are you the one who treats it as someone else's problem, or the one who understands that public health is all of our responsibility? Because in the end, gonorrhea isn't just about medicine, it's about us. And the future we create depends on the choices we make today. As I reflect on everything we've uncovered about gonorrhea, I keep coming back to one simple but powerful truth. This infection is more than a medical condition. It's a mirror reflecting the choices we make as individuals and as a society. For years, we believed antibiotics would always be there to protect us. We believed infections were temporary problems easily fixed with a pill or a shot. But gonorrhea is showing us that this mindset is dangerously outdated. What makes this infection so unsettling isn't just its ability to spread silently or cause long-term complications like infertility and chronic pain. It's the fact that it's teaching us a lesson we thought we'd already learned. Bacteria evolve, and if we underestimate them, we lose. Gonorrhea is reminding us that health isn't guaranteed by modern medicine alone. It depends on awareness, responsibility, and action. On a personal level, this lesson has forced me to rethink the way I see prevention. It's not about fear, it's about respect. Respecting my own body enough to protect it, respecting my partners enough to be honest, and respecting the larger community enough to understand that my choices ripple outward. I can't control what bacteria do, but I can control how seriously I take my role in stopping their spread. That perspective shift is something I hope more people will embrace. The bigger lesson, though, is about humility. We like to think of ourselves as being in control of nature, as if technology and medicine have put us at the top of the food chain. But gonorrhea is humbling us. It's reminding us that even the smallest organisms can outwit us if we don't pay attention. That's not a reason to panic. It's a reason to take responsibility. It's a reason to invest in research, to prioritize prevention, and to keep learning. If there's one thing I've learned from this journey, it's that small daily actions add up. Getting tested, using protection, finishing antibiotics, talking openly about sexual health, these aren't just chores. They're acts of resilience. They're steps we take, not only for ourselves, but for everyone who might be affected by the choices we make. So here's my takeaway. The fight against gonorrhea isn't just a medical challenge. It's a test of whether we're willing to see health as something we share, not just something we own. And if we rise to that challenge, we might not just keep gonorrhea treatable, we might also build a stronger, smarter approach to every infection we face in the future. Now I'd like to hear from you. Do you think doctors should go beyond just treating infections and actively explain to patients how their choices affect public health? Or do you think that's pushing too far into personal responsibility? Share your perspective in the comments below. I'd love to see the range of opinions. And if this conversation made you think differently about gonorrhea or about health in general, I invite you to subscribe to The Wellness Way. Together we can keep exploring the stories that shape our understanding of the human body, and maybe even change the way we face the future.